watching Bengals Breakdown by Chat Sports, and I am Stone Shields. Welcome into this at-home edition of Bengals Breakdown. Hope you're all having a fantastic Sunday. Coming up on today's show, we got a couple of things to talk about. Orlando Brown Jr., of course, left tackle for the Cincinnati Bengals, went on NFL Live over at ESPN a couple of days ago, and he shared a little bit of insight in regards to the contract situations of Shemar Stewart and Trey Hendrickson. Going to be discussing that. Also, some Trey Hendrickson to Seattle rumors from Daniel Jeremiah that we're kind of going to clean up here on today's show. Also, PFF ranked their wide receiving corps across the National Football League, and the Bengals certainly got disrespected in that ranking. We'll be discussing that. And also, Joe Burrow, along with Jamar Chase, is at Fanatics Fest, has been over the past couple of days, and there's been some clips that have surfaced from that we're going to talk about to round out today's show. But before we get into that, make sure you guys hit that sub button if you haven't done so already. That's youtube.com/BengalsTV. We will be here all off season long. And before we know it, it'll be training camp time. And that's when things really start to heat up, right? We'll see a bunch of different position battles kind of go at it. And the Bengals, obviously, they've got their stars in place, but lots of questions along the offensive line and lots of questions throughout the entirety of their defense as well. So you aren't going to want to miss any of our coverage coming at you guys from Bengals training camp. Make sure you hit that sub button for me right now. Helps us out, helps yourself out as well. Zeroing in on 20,000 subscribers here at the channel. About 8,000 when I took over, so pretty important milestone here on the horizon. Help us out. Hit that sub button for me right now. As I mentioned, Orlando Brown Jr. went on ESPN a couple of days ago, and, they were asking him all kinds of different stuff about the team. Obviously, the noteworthy stuff was his answer when they asked him about Shemar Stewart and Trey Hendrickson. He didn't really provide a ton of detail, but I do think his closing remark is relatively significant. I'll read off the quote here. He said, "We got a very close locker room, first and foremost. Guys have talked to Trey, guys have talked to Shemar, even with Jamar and T. When they were going through what they were going through, we spoke to them. I mean, ultimately, it's the NFL. It's a business. It's part of it. These types of things happen. But I would imagine these deals get done, hopefully sooner rather than later." So, obviously, I don't think Orlando Brown Jr. would go on there at ESPN and make those comments if he didn't believe it. Could this be a way of him trying to push the front office along? Yep, certainly is a possibility there as well. But it's good to know that players within the locker room still have optimism that this thing is going to get done. I've kind of gone back and forth on my thoughts with Trey Hendrickson. Originally going into the offseason, I was like 100% something that's going to get done. You hear Duke Tobin talk about it. You see the Higgins and Chase deal get done. It's like, yeah, it's going to get done. And then you have the part where kind of Hendrickson's airing out his grievances on the Pat McAfee show, putting in a statement for Adam Schefter to release, right? And then he has he shows up at an OTA session, doesn't participate, but just has kind of a meeting with the media and continues to air out his grievances. So at that point, you're kind of like, okay, maybe this thing isn't going to get done. Now things are seemingly circling in the right direction once more. You had the report from Diana Rossini about a week or so ago saying that they're back at the table trying to negotiate. Now you got Orlando Brown Jr. making these comments as well. I do think it's significant, like I said, that he has optimism that they're going to get done. And let's be very clear here, Orlando Brown Jr. is one of the top leaders on this football team there at that left tackle position. And, obviously the Hendrickson and Stewart situations are totally different. And, the Stewart thing, that to me frustrates me a little bit more because he's a rookie and he hasn't done anything yet, as I've talked about here on the show. So with him, he just needs to figure out a way to get out on the football field and start contributing to this football team because he hasn't done that. Trey Hendrickson, obviously a little bit of a different situation. He's coming off back-to-back 17.5 sack seasons. So obviously he's trying to get one big payday here before he kind of enters the twilight stages of his career. I still think he has good football ahead of him, but this offseason right here is his opportunity to get his massive contract, and obviously that is what he is gunning for at this point. So I do think it's interesting comments there from Orlando Brown Jr. about Shemar Stewart and Trey Hendrickson, and his top comment was there was how close the locker room is, and we've heard Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow talk about that. The fact that they've been able to stick together over the past 2 years that have been certainly very rocky and finish out strong, I think speaks to the level of continuity that they have in that locker room. So I do think everything he's saying is true. Hopefully that optimism comes true as it relates to Trey Hendrickson and Shemar Stewart. Pin comment time here on today's show. Will both Trey Hendrickson and Shemar Stewart practice during training camp? You think both their situations are figured out and they're on the football field in training camp? Let me know in the comment section. Type Y for yes or N for no. Just wanted to clear up some of these rumors kind of circulating about Trey Hendrickson and the Seattle Seahawks. Daniel Jeremiah, of course, is an incredible NFL draft analyst, does a great job, especially with the combine, stuff like that. And he was on a ESPN radio show out in Seattle, or maybe it was a podcast, and they were basically asking him, and he was like, yeah, if you're the Seattle Seahawks, you should be doing everything you can to land Trey Hendrickson via a trade. And he's totally right when he says that, but just to be clear, there is no, rumblings about a potential trade going down between the Seahawks and the Bengals. Seattle has a really solid defense. They got some young pieces there, and in the eyes of Jeremiah, he feels that, they're kind of a Trey Hendrickson type of player away from taking that next step and really competing in the NFC West. So there's nothing, no details about a potential trade going down. Again, my stance on a Trey Hendrickson trade has not changed, right? If a trade was going to go down, it was going to go down prior to the draft a couple of months ago. At this point, the Bengals don't really get anything out of trading Trey Hendrickson. They're looking for compensation that could help them this year, right? This is their win now stage. It's my opinion that as long as Burrow's here, you can win. But, with Higgins and Chase, you got a few years with those four guys. You got to do everything you can to try to win a championship in this window. And trading Trey Hendrickson for 2026 draft picks would make absolutely no sense. Cincinnati's not going to do it. He's either going to sit out or they're going to come to terms on an agreement and he's going to play football for Cincinnati because he's not playing for another football team this season. We'll continue with our show here in a second, but do want to give a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. Let you guys know that Bengals Crucial Catch hoodies are on sale. They're available. You can go get them. I believe they're $20 to $30 off as well. Crucial Catch, of course, is the NFL's way of fighting back against cancer. It's a great cause. It's a great initiative. And on top of it, the hoodies are really cool as well. We'll put that link in the comment section and the description of today's show. It's chatsports.com/Bengals hoodie/ Go check them out over at Fanatics. And by the way, not the last time we're going to be talking about Fanatics here on today's show. All right, let's talk wide receiver rankings here from PFF. I do think the Bengals kind of got disrespected in the latest rankings that have come out. Now, we're going to be talking a lot of rankings here as we kind of get close to training camp. This is where different websites, different media outlets, right, are putting out their rankings for teams, coaches, position groups, you name it. And this is kind of the first one that we're discussing here this offseason. And I was kind of shocked to see where the PFF had the Bengals ranked as far as their wide receiver core goes. Now, I do want to make note, it's not wide receiver duo. It's wide receiver core. So that's the entirety of the pass catching room. Obviously, if it's duo, I don't think you can make an argument that Cincinnati's not one with Higgins and Chase. But they had Cincinnati at number 3. Behind the Philadelphia Eagles, who were at 1, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were at 2. Obviously, Philadelphia is incredible. They're coming off a world championship. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson was able to do a little bit of stuff for them as well. I think they kind of were including Dallas Goedert in that mix, even though he's a tight end. But, it said wide receiver. Maybe they were just going strictly pass catcher. But Philadelphia certainly is incredible. But when you look at what Cincinnati has, I don't think you can say Philadelphia is better. You get the best wide receiver in the National Football League in Jamar Chase, and the guy that I think is the top 12 wide receiver in the National Football League as well, in T. Higgins. And, I was really confused by that. And what confused me even more was the second team, was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I'll be the first to say, in my lifetime, I think Mike Evans might be the most underrated player in our generation. But when you're looking at the rest of that room, you got Godwin, who's coming off a serious injury, right? You just drafted Emeka Egbuka, who I think is going to be a solid player, but he's a rookie, right? And then you got McMillan as well, the kid from Washington. So to put them over Cincinnati's group, very head-scratching, but I think PFF's rationale is this. Yeah, we know what you have in Chase and Higgins, but what do you have after that? I think it's a valuable, or it makes sense. It's an interesting point that they're making, and it's it could be well said. But bottom line, I've got a lot of belief in Andre Osavash. I have for a long time. I think he's really gonna burst onto the scene. He did a great job last year. Think about all the touchdowns he had. I think he had 6 last season. Was a great goal line threat for Joe Burrow. Was a guy he could go to over the middle. He took massive shots. I think he's going to continue to get better and borderline become a household name for Cincinnati here as well. And you hear people all around the building talking about, well, Jermaine Burton, he's taking that next step. He's trending, right? He's becoming a little bit more mature, a little bit more professional. So we all know he's got the tools in the toolbox to be a really good NFL receiver. It's kind of the stuff in between the ears and the decision making off the football field that kind of have held him back to this point. So Jermaine Burton certainly has the talent, and we're all kind of waiting for Charlie Jones to kind of do something, right? Fourth round pick a couple of years ago, played at Purdue, played at Iowa. And really, it's the injuries that have been an issue for him. We've seen him pop in the punt return game, but that hamstring kind of just lingered throughout the entirety of the 2024 campaign, and we never really saw much of Charlie Jones last season. So I get it in the sense of there's some uncertainty beyond the top two wide receivers for Cincinnati, but in my opinion, this is clearly the best wide receiving core in the National Football League. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased, but 3 behind Philly and, Tampa, really. It seems a bit of a stretch, but that's what PFF has here in their first rankings. Again, we're going to continue to break down all these rankings. Just kind of something you got to do at this stage of the offseason here in the summer. Another opportunity for you guys to get involved with our show here at Bengals Breakdown. Rank the Bengals wide receiving core amongst all NFL wide receiving core. So 1 to 32 in the comments section of today's show. I've got them at 1. Let me know what you guys think right now. All right, closing out today's show with something a little lighthearted, a little fun. Joe Burrow, along with Shemar Chase, at Fanatics Fest. Obviously, Fanatics, really a global company here at this point. Michael Rubin's calling the shots over there, and you see a lot of former NFL players and current NFL players at Fanatics Fest. They all seemingly show up, and there's different challenges that they are put through and things that they're doing out there. And Joe Burrow's kind of gone a little bit viral here for his clips of him throwing a baseball, trying to essentially hit a strike zone, and he's standing not very far away from the strike zone, and he's missing the target, and he's missing the target repeatedly, and he's missing the target badly. And I do think it was kind of funny to see that, because we all look at Joe Burrow as kind of some, invincible guy. He can do no wrong, right? He's an incredible football player, and it was kind of nice to see him look like a complete human out there, as he totally was missing off that target. But I do want to add 2 things here. Grew up playing sports, played in high school, whatever, didn't do anything beyond that. But when you go from throwing a football all the time, which obviously is what Joe Burrow does for a living, to throwing a baseball, it is very difficult because it's a totally different size ball and it's a totally different throwing motion, to be honest with you, as well. And you can see him trying to throw it like a football, and that's not going to work out. You got to adjust your delivery a little bit. And if you notice in the clips, all of the throws are pulled left, and that's something that will happen as well. Obviously, the ball is a lot lighter, it's a lot smaller, and it was funny to see him miss that poorly, but I totally get it. If you're throwing a football at all times, then you pop right to a baseball. It is very difficult. And also what I always found difficult when throwing a baseball was it just feels weird when you're throwing a baseball without a glove on your left hand. For whatever reason, I was always less accurate if I was throwing a baseball with no glove on the left hand, and obviously that's what Joe Burrow was dealing with there as well. But kind of a funny little side takeaway there from Fanatics Fest. Joe Burrow struggling to throw the baseball, and I'm sure he's going to get some flack for that from his teammates and his peers around that, but certainly thought that was funny. Good to see Joe Burrow out at Fanatics Fest, and I assume once training camp rolls around, he's going to be 100% ready to go. He seems healthy, and by all accounts, he had a phenomenal mini camp and OTA session as well. But that'll do it for this edition of Bengals Breakdown. We'll be back in the studio tomorrow, so looking forward to bringing another video to you guys then. Until next time, take care from Bengals Breakdown.